It is a great pleasure for me to be here this evening representing the Honourable Prime Minister at these awards that actually carry his name. As you know, the Honourable Prime Minister, as highlighted by the CEO, has been travelling in Europe and regrets that he cannot be here himself. But he has asked me to pass on his warmest greetings to you all and to congratulate the winners of the various categories. You will notice, as has been highlighted, the awards this year have been revamped, not only by renaming them, but creating 12 new categories. So the Westpac Prime Minister's Export of the Year Awards becomes the Prime Minister's International Business Awards. The emphasis is still on exports, but we have moved away from industry-based categories to provide a broader framework in which we can reward those companies that are successfully taking the Fijian-made brand of quality goods and services to the world. Had we stuck to the old name, this would have been the 24th Export of the Year Awards. But as it is, these are the first International Business Awards, and we are sure that the event will continue to be one of the genuine highlights of the year. Because it's a night to celebrate the achievements of a broad range of individuals and companies that are driving the force behind the Fijian economy. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we single out those who have made an outstanding contribution to our export effort over the past 12 months. But before we announce the winners, I think it's worth me repeating what the Honourable Prime Minister said recently about where we all fit into Fiji's strategic engagement with the rest of the world. We have a very clear strategy, a very clear narrative as a nation at the present time as we continue our journey to transform Fiji from a developing country into a modern nation state. First, we have to secure the fragile environment in which we live. So we are leading the fight against climate change as the incoming president of COP23 and the fight to maintain the health of our oceans and seas by co-hosting the UN Ocean Summit in June next year in New York. Then we have to strengthen Fiji's presence in the world and the respect we command in the community of nations. So we are making a disproportionate contribution to the United Nations peacekeeping in areas of conflict and sending civilian volunteers to help build capacity in our Pacific neighbours. As the Prime Minister outlined last week, we are also using sport as an instrument of foreign policy. We are sending our sportsmen and women out into the world, not only to represent Fiji, but to bolster the performance of teams in various codes throughout the world. Fijians helping other teams, other nations to be winners, and in the process, enhancing our global reputation. Then, of course, there are all of you, the men and women taking the Fijian-made brand and our growing collection of quality goods and services to the world, and earning us the export dollars that are building our nation's wealth and creating prosperity for every Fijian. Like the Fijian peacekeepers serving with the UN, you are also foot soldiers in the front line of our campaign to develop Fiji and fulfill our vision to make our nation great. So tonight is a night to celebrate your success and for me to warmly thank you on behalf of the Honourable Prime Minister and the entire nation. We salute you for your enterprise, your energy, your innovation, your hard work, just as we salute the many thousands of ordinary Fijians who work in your companies and are key elements of that success. Vinaka Vakalevu to all of you and to those of you who work for your bosses and those of you who are not here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, 2016 has been an extremely challenging year for Fiji, not only because of the loss of 44 of our loved ones and the thousands of people made homeless by Tropical Cyclone Winston, but because of the $2.8 billion hit we took to the Fijian economy, nearly 1/3 of our GDP, which makes your success and our success as a nation all the more remarkable, despite these adversities. I know many of you in this room not only had to weather Winston yourselves, but came to the assistance of your fellow Fijians. And whether you did so in cash or in kind or both, your contributions to relieving the suffering of our people have been deeply appreciated. No one in our nation of our size, no one in a nation, of our size can operate in isolation. We are all connected, all part of one team. And while it may seem trite to say, teamwork in our export effort is as important as teamwork in winning a Rugby Sevens Olympic gold medal. The highlight, of course, of our bittersweet year as surely as Winston was our lowest point. It is therefore critical for government and the arms of government, such as Investment Fiji, to work closely with those of you in the private sector as we continue to expand our export, trade, and grow the Fijian economy. Our education revolution is creating stronger skills base in Fiji than at any other time in our history. But we all must do better if we are to offer satisfying and sustainable livelihoods to the many thousands of young people entering the workforce every year. As well as identifying new markets for our goods and services and providing more things that people the world over want to buy, we must do more to improve the utilization of our natural resources, and that includes, of course, our land. A country like Fiji, with a limited land surface, cannot afford to leave tracts of land unproductive, which is why, as a government, we have made it a priority to encourage Itaukei landowners to lease land they are not using to others. And in the case of limited freehold land that is available, to discourage foreign speculators from sitting on land they have purchased and do nothing with it. We wish to say a few words tonight about the expatriate landowners from the so-called Fiji Landowners Association, who are complaining about the provisions of the amendment to the Land Sales Act announced in the 2014 budget. At the very outset, it is important to highlight that this so-called association is not a legally registered entity in Fiji and comprises of a few expatriate owners of residential freehold land in Fiji. Ladies and gentlemen, this whole issue has been sidetracked by the deportation of one of their numbers, not for complaining about the changes to the law, which he is clearly entitled to do, but for outrageous behavior in swearing at His Excellency our President, the head of the state of Fiji. This so-called association is using this deportation equally outrageously to call for a travel boycott of Fiji. But let me use the opportunity that presents itself tonight to respond to this hysteria and outline the facts. Following numerous concerns against the practice of land grab by foreign citizens acquiring freehold land in Fiji for residential purposes without undertaking any actual development, in 2014, the Fijian government introduced a number of amendments to the Land Sales Act to regulate the sale, transfer, or lease of state land or freehold land for residential purposes to non-residents. Indeed, it is important to highlight that there are no restrictions on non-residents from leasing Itaukei land for residential purposes or indeed for any other purposes, whether it be commercial, industrial, or agricultural. As you all know, over 91% of all land in Fiji is Itaukei land, with the rest being either freehold or state land. The government is committed to encouraging the development of Itaukei land to enable greater returns to the Itaukei landowning units. However, the practice has been that non-residents have only been interested in acquiring freehold land for residential purposes and leaving it undeveloped for decades with no interest shown in leasing Itaukei land or developing Itaukei land. The amendments to the Act are designed to ensure that non-residents do not simply purchase state land or freehold land without undertaking any development and without making any contribution to the Fijian economy. For these reasons, the amendments to the Act in December 2014 introduced a prohibition on the sale, transfer, or lease of any state land or freehold land for residential purposes to any non-resident within any town boundary. These restrictions are only for freehold and state land for residential purposes. In other words, a foreigner can buy land for tourism purposes, for industrial purposes, for commercial purposes, anywhere in Fiji without any restriction. The law fully allows a non-resident to acquire freehold land or state land, as I said, within a town boundary, outside town boundary, for the different areas that I've just highlighted. With respect to vacant state land or freehold land for residential purposes outside any town boundary, these may be sold, transferred, or leased to a non-resident, provided that the non-resident purchaser completes the construction of a new residential dwelling within 24 months. For these non-residents who already own vacant state land or freehold land, a period of 24 months was given from December 2014 to complete the construction of a new residential dwelling. If the non-resident fails to comply with the requirement to develop the land within 24 months, the non-resident is liable to pay a penalty of 10% of the purchase price of the land until the construction is completed. Ladies and gentlemen, following numerous requests, we've made an amendment to the law, in particular after TC Winston. The government further allows another proviso to assist these owners, and those who are unable to complete the construction within the prescribed time actually can apply for an extension to a review committee chaired by the Permanent Secretary for Economy. Therefore, the land sales regulations in 2016 sets out a transparent process for any non-resident to make an application for extension. Any non-resident who makes an application to the extension for an extension to the review committee is entitled to appear before the review committee and be heard on the merits of that application. In fact, over the past few months, we already have about 15 applications that have been made, and indeed the committee is sitting next week to hear these applications for an extension of time. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, this recognizes they may not be able to build, there may be financial issues, there may be construction issues, there may be access to hardware issues, and therefore these amendments have been made to allow them to seek reprieve, and therefore then they can continue with the construction at a later date. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I would like to very quickly highlight about the issues pertaining to the economy itself. For all the challenges that have been posed by Cyclone Winston, we have never had such a sustained period of economic growth in Fiji, 7 straight years of expansion. This is a remarkable achievement, unparalleled in our post-independence history. And in closing, let me give you a brief snapshot of where we stand. Even in the wake of Winston, we are still expecting the Fijian economy to grow by nearly 3% this year, at a time when the global conditions generally are sluggish. The outlook is equally buoyant, with the Reserve Bank forecasting 3.6% growth in 2017 and a 3% in 2018 and 2019. Our trade with the region and the rest of the world continues to expand. Last year, total exports amounted to $1.87 billion, while our imports have actually been falling. From 2013 up until last year, our total imports have come down from $5.1 billion to $4.3 billion, a reduction of about 15%. But what is really significant is that there has been a rise in the imports of goods for investment purposes, which is very encouraging and indicates solid investment activity in Fiji. In a clear sign of growing confidence by both domestic and foreign investors, private sector investment in 2015 comprised 20.9% of GDP. The Fijian trade policy framework has set a target of increasing this to 25% by 2020. So we encourage you all to seize the opportunities that the government has created with our consistent and forward-looking policies, and the stability that we have entrenched by unifying the country and setting it on a new and positive course. As highlighted by Inoke, we've just finished, in fact it's still continuing and I have to return to the Aiyaz conference, nearly 2 days of workshops. And for a historic moment, as Inoke highlighted, we have now fully consolidated and revised the laws of Fiji, which has not been done for 31 years. So ladies and gentlemen, from January of next year, anyone, anywhere in the world, will be able to access through the internet, through LexisNexis, or be able to purchase hardware copies and get quarterly updates on all the laws, including not just primary laws, but regulations and even bylaws of every single legal imperative, obligation and duty in Fiji. So as an investor, both local and foreign, you'll know exactly what rules apply to you. You'll know exactly what the rules of the game are. What this does, ladies and gentlemen, and our partnership with LexisNexis, which is the world's largest legal and commercial text publishers, that it will actually create the ease of doing business. It will boost investor confidence It will also mean it creates a lot more transparency. It will also hopefully reduce the cost of the lawyers that you hire and accountants. In order, ladies and gentlemen, to also stimulate advancement, our laws and our legal processes with respect to investment in Fiji, the conference also discussed a number of topics of great interest to investors and foreign companies. These, for example, included Fiji's desire to ratify the UNCITRAL, which is United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. What this essentially means, without boring you with all the legal details, is that there's two bills before Parliament. One is to do with electronic transactions, which essentially will mean that the courts will have to accept contracts that are now negotiated through the internet, contracts that are negotiated through e-commerce, contracts and decisions pertaining to contracts, amendments to contracts through other electronic means that can now be used as actual legal obligations under what we generally would have as a written contract. Fiji is also going to, hopefully in February, ratify the actual convention itself, which will mean that those of you who have a business relationship with other countries that have ratified UNCITRAL will be able to carry out contracts, negotiate contracts on already agreed terms and conditions that are internationally accepted, that are also internationally adjudicated. What this does is places Fiji as the first country in the Pacific Islands to have such a provision. We also have, as you know, the bill on the national switch, which will mean that we can go further into the electronic world. It makes your business dealings, it makes people who want to deal with you from overseas, makes it a lot easier for them to be able to deal in Fiji and the Fijian market. So there's a number of changes that are taking place, and we will be, as far as e-commerce is concerned, leapfrogging, at least by the end of next year, into a number of new areas that will make your business dealings a lot more easier. Our massive investment in improving our infrastructure, ladies and gentlemen, is already producing dividends. And as I said at the outset, the challenge now for Fiji is to exploit a more competitive position by moving into new markets for our goods and services, create new industries and modernize existing ones, generate more employment opportunities, generate more opportunities for the youth to actually become entrepreneurs themselves. Nearly 70% of our population is below the age of 40. That is not only a challenge, but in fact there's enormous opportunities that lies within that demographic. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, if we are able to tap into that, we'll be able to extend our country's growing prosperities for all the people. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honourable Prime Minister thanks you once again for the contribution you're all making to build that future. Congratulations to our winners tonight, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of the evening. And thank you very much.